What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside Hartford, Connecticut. And today we have a doozy of a trade to discuss. It's going to be the Jake Odorizzi trade, which occurred on December 9th, 2012. Now, originally I'd planned to make this a two-parter, but I couldn't find a good point to cut it in half, so I wrote small and have a lot of empty space on the bottom, but trust me, this is going to be a fun one. So this trade, like I said, occurred December 9th, 2012. So we saw the Tampa Bay Rays acquire starting pitcher Jake Odorizzi, third baseman slash outfielder Will Myers, pitcher Mike Montgomery, and infielder Patrick Leonard from the Kansas City Royals in exchange for starting pitcher James Shields and relief pitcher Wade Davis. How did this trade break down? How did it work out? Well, let's start with Tampa Bay. So obviously Tampa Bay started out with Jake Odorizzi, name of the player in this trade, and he actually spent 5 years in the organization for Tampa Bay. Now, 4 of them were as a member of the parent club, Tampa Bay itself. He did spend a year in the minors there. And he was a pretty solid starter. Now, the team wasn't great for the first part of those seasons, but he was still pretty good. His ERA was much better than his win-loss record would indicate it should have been. Now, he ends up getting traded, and he gets traded to Minnesota straight up for a shortstop prospect named Jermaine Palacios. Now, Palacios is still a minor leaguer in Tampa Bay's system today, so this trade is still up for debate, at least on Tampa Bay's side. So, how did the other players do? Well, we'll start with Mike Montgomery here. Mike Montgomery, he would spend 2 seasons in the minors for Tampa Bay before he himself was traded. And he was traded to Seattle here, straight up for a pitcher named Erasmo Ramirez. Now, Ramirez, while in Tampa Bay, he was good. He spent 2.5 seasons rotating between the starting pitching role and a reliever role before he was trading. He was solid, though. And he ends up getting traded back to Seattle. Now, I do rat on Seattle a lot because they do these trades where they trade a guy and then trade back for him. And this is yet another time when they do that. And Tampa Bay would receive relief pitcher Steve Cishek. Now, Cishek, he's a solid pitcher, but he was a free agent after the season, and he ends up leaving. He did have a strong half season for Tampa, but like I said, he walked. He left. Patrick Leonard, back to the original trade. Patrick Leonard, he spent 5 years as a good minor leaguer, but he never cracked it. He never cracked the major league roster, and he ends up walking as a free agent after 5 years in the minors. And last but not least, we have Will Myers here. So Will Myers, he had one strong season for Tampa, in which he actually won Rookie of the Year, despite only appearing in 88 games. So that goes to show you how good he was. And his second year in Tampa was injury plagued. He kept getting hurt. He suffered a bad injury that cost him 3 months. And he ends up getting traded. Now he gets traded in this beautiful 3-team trade here. Now this trade's more known for a player to be named later, who we will discuss momentarily. Now in this trade, we have Tampa Bay in orange, San Diego in red, and Washington in magenta. So Tampa Bay would acquire a trio of players from San Diego in first baseman Jack Bauers, relief pitcher Birch Smith, and catcher Rene Rivera, as well as outfielder Steven Sosa Jr. and pitcher Travis Ott from the Nationals. The Padres would acquire 3 players from Tampa Bay in third baseman outfielder Will Myers, who we discussed, catcher Ryan Hannigan, and pitcher Jose Castillo, while the Nationals would acquire starting pitcher Joe Ross from the Padres, as well as a player to be named later, who would become shortstop Trey Turner, again from the Padres. That is crazy that Trey Turner was a player to be named later. I'll get to that momentarily, though. Of course, we got to break down Tampa Bay first. Now, Jack Bauers, he spent 3.5 years in the minors for Tampa Bay, and he ends up debuting, and he has a solid half season. But then he himself ends up getting traded after this solid half season. And he's traded in, you guessed it, another 3-team trade. I'll get to this I'll get to this in a second. Birch Smith up here in this original 3-team trade here. He was picked in the Rule 5 draft, and he never played for Tampa Bay because he got picked and taken away from them. Um, Rene Rivera, he spent 1 year as a backup catcher before he himself was released. Steven Souza Jr. He has 3 strong seasons as a starting outfielder for Tampa Bay before he gets traded in another 3-team trade, which we'll get to momentarily again. And Travis Ott here is a minor leaguer still to date in Tampa Bay's system, so he is still there. We'll start with the first one here that we had discussed, the Jack Bauers 3-team trade. So in this 3-team trade, Tampa Bay is in orange, Cleveland is in red, and Seattle is in this magenta color. Again, I told you this trade was going to be a fun breakdown. So, in this trade, Tampa Bay would acquire relief pitcher Cole Sulser, and infielder Yandy Diaz, both from Cleveland. Cleveland would reacquire a former familiar face for them in first baseman Carlos Santana from the Mariners and first baseman outfielder Jack Bauers from Tampa Bay, while Seattle would acquire designated hitter Edwin Encarnacion. Okay, so Tampa Bay in this trade got Solskjaer, who he only plays a month for the team because he was in the minors. They call him up in September, and then they end up waiving him after September, and he ends up getting claimed off of waivers, but he had a solid month while there. He didn't dominate by any stretch of the means, but he was still good. Now, Yandy Diaz is the bigger name in this trade, and he's been a good player for the year that he was on the team. He's been doing okay in 2020, but again, these stats do not reflect 2020. And now we have this other trade up here, the third of the 3-team trades. In this trade, Tampa Bay is in orange. I kept that consistent throughout. Arizona is in red, and the New York Yankees are in magenta. So the Rays would acquire second baseman Nick Solak from New York, with a trio of pitchers coming over from Arizona in Anthony Banda, Colin Poche, and Sam McWilliams, while Arizona would acquire Steven Souza Jr. from Tampa Bay and pitcher Taylor Widener from the Yankees, and the Yankees would acquire third baseman Brandon Drury from the Diamondbacks. So on the Rays side of this trade, Nick Solak himself, he's decent. He spends 1.5 years in the minors for the team before getting traded away. While this trade ends up getting traded to Texas in exchange for pitcher Peter Fairbanks. And Fairbanks did not play that well in a half season in Tampa Bay. Again, we don't count the 2020 stats at this moment. And how did these 3 pitchers do for Tampa? Well, pretty simple. So Colin Poche, he's barely played in the majors. Anthony Banda, he's done okay for parts of 2 seasons. Now, he started in 2018, and then he ends up needing Tommy John, and then he comes back at the end of 2019. He's done okay, not great, but okay. McWilliams has not made the majors yet. He's still a minor leaguer. That is everything Tampa Bay got in this trade. Like I said, messy trade. Messy, 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 as Double D would say. Ha. So now we got to go to Kansas City. In Kansas City gets James Shields and Wade Davis. So James Shields himself, he has 2 strong seasons in Kansas City before he walks. Now, unfortunately for him, he walked the year before they won the World Series, but he kind of struggled in the playoffs for the team, and he gets this big contract to go to San Diego. And we will be discussing a trade titled the James Shields trade at some point. Don't you worry. While Wade Davis, he started off as a starting pitcher for Kansas City, but then they moved him to reliever, and he just dominated from there on out. He was a dominant reliever from 2014 to 2016. And when I say dominant, I mean dominant. He was extremely good. He was a key piece in them winning the World Series in 2015, and he was so good. And then they end up trading him, Wade Davis, straight up to the Chicago Cubs in exchange for outfielder Jorge Soler. Now, Soler, he had 2 injury-plagued seasons before finally getting a chance to break out in 2019, and he has dominated, and he's just looked very good since. Obviously, injuries kind of ruined him for the first 2 years, 2017, 2018, and strikeouts and just normal slumps and all that. That's Kansas City. How did all these other trades, all these other teams do with everything like that? I'll just start with Minnesota here with Jake Odorizzi. So Jake Odorizzi, he had a solid season, just okay. And since then, he's had for 2018, 2019, he had a strong season. But he's not the same player. I don't think he's a great player, but he's a good player. So I'm just going to go to Seattle now. Now, Seattle, again, has a couple different roles here. And Seattle got pitcher Mike Montgomery. And Mike Montgomery, he spent 1.5 years rotating between the minors and the majors before he himself was traded. That trade will not be discussed. The reacquired Erasmo Ramirez, he had a mediocre 1.5 seasons before he also decided to walk from the team. And Edwin Encarnacion here. So Edwin Encarnacion, he had a power-heavy half season for the team before they traded him away. Again, that trade will not be discussed, as they basically just got a no-name prospect at this point, and this was last season, so they definitely haven't developed him. San Diego. So San Diego up here, like I said, they had got Will Myers, Ryan Hannigan, and Jose Castillo. So Will Myers, he's been a starter in San Diego for 5 seasons. Now, he's displayed power and speed, but he's also had some troubles. He hasn't been 100% the best player in the league, but he's had a lot of positive moments. He's had some negatives. But like I said, he showed a lot of power. He showed a lot of speed. He's had seasons before. He had a season where he had 30 homers and 20 steals. That's impressive in today's majors. That doesn't happen a lot. A lot of guys are power-heavy, power-hungry players. Jose Castillo, he hasn't played much, but he has left a good impression in the limited time that he's played. And Ryan Hannigan, well, he was immediately shipped to the Boston Red Sox in exchange for infielder Will Middlebrooks. So Middlebrooks, while there in San Diego, he struggled mightily, immensely in a half season before he ends up getting just demoted to the minors, and then he ends up leaving the organization. So he just did not pan out. While we're here, let's talk about Ryan Hannigan to Boston. So Boston with Ryan Hannigan, he had one good season, and then he had a bad season before he gets released from the team. Washington, I already discussed Trey Turner. I already mentioned him, but we'll, of course, go into more detail. So Trey Turner, we know, he debuted in August of 2015, and since debuting, he's just become a star. He's having a great 2020, so his WAR is only going up right now. It's just crazy to me that he was considered a player to be named later. But it goes to show you. So Trey Turner's a great player. He was a key piece in their World Series win in 2019. Well, Joe Ross, he's no slouch either. He's actually been a solid starting pitcher for Washington for 4.5 seasons. He's not a flashy name. He's not a sexy name by any stretch of the means. But he's a guy who goes out there. He'll get his job done. He'll get you 5 innings, 6 innings, 5 innings. He's a good enough player. Obviously, he's hung around the team for a little while. Cleveland here got Carlos Santana back. And remember, Carlos Santana had been with the team for about a decade before this. Then he left in 2018 to play 2018 with the Phillies before getting traded away. And he's been a great player since returning to Cleveland. He's been a great mentor to some of the younger guys. He continues to draw more walks than he does strikes out. So it goes to show you, he got his power stroke back in Cleveland. He's been a great pickup, reacquisition, I should say, for them. Jack Bauers, on the other hand, he has struggled since joining Cleveland. He just hasn't really been able to figure it out. He's having some trouble staying above the Mendoza. Yeah, he's like hitting 220, I think. But he's not supplementing it with the power that you usually see with guys hitting 220. So Cleveland, I don't want to say they regret that part, but they're very happy to have Santana back. Arizona, Steven Souza Jr., he's been okay. He had an okay season, first season, not great, obviously. He had some good power, but other than that, nothing great. And they ended up tearing his ACL in spring training 2019, so he didn't play, and then he ends up they don't give him a contract, so he ends up leaving in free agency. Taylor Widener, he made his debut in 2020, so he did make his debut for Arizona, but the jury's still out on him. Um, Texas got Nick Solak here, and Solak has played very well in the limited time he's been on the organization. He's a very flashy player. I like him. He has speed. He has, good defense. He's one of the guys I'm a big fan of. So I loved this trade for Texas. Nick Solak looks like he's going to be not a star, not a superstar, but a good player. For the Yankees now, Brandon Drury, he didn't play that well. He barely played at all, I should say. He played like 3 weeks, and then they end up trading him because they end up demoting him and then trading him. So he just didn't pan out for the Yankees. Last but not least, we have the Cubs with Wade Davis, and he had a solid season as the closer of the Cubs before he himself walked, going to the Colorado Rockies. But he was instrumental on the team winning their World Series in 2016. Now, he wasn't the closer for the full season because, again, remember they got Aroldis Chapman, but he was a solid player. He ended up being the setup man. So that's the trade. How did it pan out for everyone? Who's the true winner? Believe it or not, it's basically a three-way tie. Now, Tampa Bay, if you go by pure WAR, is the winner. They got an 18.9 WAR out of this. Kansas City gets an 18.5 WAR. And then, believe it or not, Washington, despite only having 2 players, gets an 18.1 WAR. And then everyone else from there on out is kind of okay. So San Diego had a decent 8.3 WAR. Minnesota got a 4.7. Again, subject to change. Seattle has a 4.5. Boston got a negative 0.1. Arizona got a negative 0.4. The Yankees got a negative 0.3. Cleveland's at a positive, finally, 3.9. Texas is at a 0.7. Again, I expect that to go up. And Chicago finished with a 1.8 out of Wade Davis. That is this trade breakdown. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This was a long one. This was a messy one. I apologize for that. It took us all over the place. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, have a great rest of your day, and make sure to like, subscribe, comment if you have any trades that you'd recommend. Definitely look back and check and see if there's any other trades that we've broken down that you haven't seen that you're interested in. There's been a lot of them, but this one was definitely one of the most difficult ones. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.